Hey everyone, it's your boy Parker, coming to you today to do a review of a classic video game, Final Fantasy VII. So, this is a classic. It's from a long gone era, but it got a remake earlier this year, so I figured the appropriate thing to do would be play this game, considering I'd never played it before and it's supposed to be so legendary, and it's been getting hyped up for like 24 years, so yeah, decided to check it out earlier this year. I actually finished this game back in June, but I wanted to wait to post a review because I wanted to do a Final Fantasy VII week where I review this game, the sequel movie, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children from 2006, and then do a review of the remake game, which was just released in 2020 this year. So overall, I really enjoyed the journey that this game took me on, but it wasn't exactly perfect by like modern standards, for sure. The story overall of Final Fantasy VII is incredibly confusing if you've played it or interacted with any form of media having to do with Final Fantasy VII. So you play as this guy Cloud. He once worked for a military organization called Soldier, and they are a part of the Shinra Electric Company, and Shinra are these people that figured out how to take the planet's life energy called Mako and turn it into power, and they run this big mechanized steampunk city called Midgar. This is already a lot of information going on, but this is the basics, this is the simple stuff. So there's this guy Sephiroth. He was a high-ranking soldier. He wants to destroy the planet because his mom, Genova, who's an alien, she's like a god from outer space. And okay, it's crazy. It's crazy. But long story short, the story's weird. But when you really get into it, you start to realize just how much work went into it, and the overall adventure is actually extremely epic. And it's one of those stories where, yeah, it's hard to understand and it's weird, but once you put the time into it and you understand what the heck is going on, it's like very intriguing, it's very well told, and it was kind of rewarding learning so much about this strange story. I had to use my imagination a lot for this game in terms of understanding what was happening in certain key scenes. I mean, this was one of the first 3D animated video games of the time, and it was certainly the most ambitious and most expensive. But when you look at those visuals, for the time, in some cases, it's actually incredibly impressive. But I mean, you compare it to today, and it's like no contest, no way. That being said, it's a huge cast of characters going on in this game. I mean, there's the people that you play with, and then there's all the NPCs on the side, and every single character has their own little charm. The amount of choice that they put into customizing your party members is actually pretty staggering. I mean, the game's from the 90s, but, you know, we can't discount how advanced some of these ideas for Japanese role-playing games were back then. I mean, it's by far one of the most in-depth battle systems I've ever played in any game, and that's saying a lot. I mean, I've played other Square Enix titles, but I mean, the materia system that they have is so complicated in so many ways. Overall, I mean, this battle system, I wouldn't say I've mastered it in any regard. I did not kind of figure out how to get it to its fullest potential, per se, but it was very easy to recognize the bevy of options that are available to, you know, any hardcore fan that has played this game multiple times over and over again and knows, you know, how best to strategize and put the time in to get their party to be as like OP as possible. This game is totally like for hardcore fans of Japanese role-playing games. I mean, like, you really have to want to play it because the combat can be very repetitive. I mean, back then it's all turn-based. It's, you know, you're choosing what you want your move to be, based on a menu of options. And there are a lot of menus going on here. Yeah, the menus don't explain a whole lot. There's a ton of status conditions that even by the end of the game, I had no idea what the heck they did. I mean, if you're looking for something simple and easy and you're like, oh, hey, I've played Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy 12 or 15 or whatever, and I really liked it, but I want to go back to Final Fantasy VII and play it for the first time because that's, such a legendary game. Maybe. In some, you really have to put the time in to get invested in this one. The story's going to be weird a lot of the time, but once it gets going, it's going, and the journey overall is rather incredible, and the music just slaps the whole time. In the end, I would say it was worth it. Oh, and for that reason, I would give it a 5 out of 5.